Commander Zex-9 floated in the control center of the monitoring station, his 6 arms working different control panels at the same time. The station orbited around the planet Kepler 442b, watching the empty space between star systems for any signs of trouble. Zex-9 had been doing this job for 20 years and nothing interesting ever happened in this part of space. The morning started like any other morning until the emergency signal came through the deep space communications array. At first, Zex-9 thought it was just another merchant ship having engine problems or maybe pirates attacking a cargo vessel. These things happened all the time in the outer territories where the Galactic Council had less control, but when he opened the message, his blood turned cold. The transmission was broken and full of static, but the words he could hear made his hands shake. The voice belonged to Admiral Kelks of the Centauri Defense Fleet, one of the strongest military forces in that sector. "Emergency broadcast to all Council stations," the voice said through the crackling static. "The Void Hunters have awakened." "Repeat, the Void Hunters have awakened?" "They consumed the entire Rigel system in less than 6 hours. Nothing remains, all ships, all planets, all life. Gone. We are falling back to the inner systems, but they are following us. Request immediate assistance from the Galactic Council. This is not a drill." Zex-9 had heard stories about the Void Hunters when he was young, but everyone thought they were just legends. Ancient tales told of mechanical creatures that lived in the empty space between galaxies, sleeping for millions of years before waking, up to feed on entire star systems. Most people believe these stories were made up to scare children. The transmission continued with more broken reports from different ships and planets. Each message painted the same terrible picture: the void. Hunters were real, and they were destroying everything in their path. They moved from system to system like a plague, leaving behind nothing but cold, empty space where life once existed. Zex-9 immediately sent the transmission to the Council headquarters on the capital world of Nexus Prime. Within minutes, his communication console lit up with incoming calls from Council members all across the galaxy. The emergency session would begin in 2 hours. The Council chamber on Nexus Prime filled with representatives from dozens of different species. Moron of the crystalline hegemony took her place at the center podium, her crystal body reflecting the worried faces around the room. The Thalorians sat in their section with all 6 arms crossed in frustration. The gas-breathing Nephites floated in their special atmosphere tanks, their tentacles moving in agitation. "We have confirmed reports from 12 different sources," Moron announced to the gathered representatives. "The Void Hunters are not a legend. They are real, and they are consuming entire star systems at an alarming rate. In the past 18 hours, we have lost contact with the Rigel system, the Vega colonies, and the mining stations around Altair." A Thalorian commander named Vex stood up from his seat. "Our defense fleets are useless against them. Every weapon we fire just makes them stronger. Plasma cannons, particle beams, even antimatter missiles just get absorbed into their bodies. They feed on energy, and our attacks only give them more power." "What about evacuations?" asked a Nephite representative. "Can we move the civilian populations to safer areas?" "There are no safer areas," Moron replied grimly. "Our scientists believe the Void Hunters are moving toward the galactic core. Every inhabited system lies in their path. At their current rate of advancement, they will reach the Council worlds within 6 months." The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Different species blamed each other for not preparing better defenses. Some suggested surrendering and hoping the Void Hunters would spare them. Others wanted to abandon their worlds and flee to the neighboring galaxy. During the chaos, an elderly crystalline advisor named Therax approached Moron's podium. "There is one option we have not discussed," he said quietly. "One species in this galaxy has shown the ability to fight wars in ways we consider impossible." Moron's crystal body dimmed as she understood what Therax was suggesting. "You cannot be serious. The humans were quarantined for good reasons. They are too dangerous to contact. More dangerous than the complete extinction of our civilization." Therax asked. The chamber fell silent as other representatives overheard the conversation. The mention of humans made everyone uncomfortable. 300 years ago, humanity had been involved in what the Council called the Terran Incident. The details were classified, but everyone knew it ended with humans agreeing to stay in their small corner of the galaxy and never expand beyond their own solar system. "The humans are savages," protested a Thalorian general. "They solve every problem with violence and warfare. They have no concept of diplomacy or peaceful resolution." "Perhaps that is exactly what we need right now," Therax replied. "Our civilized weapons cannot harm the Void Hunters. Our peaceful methods mean nothing to creatures that only understand consumption and destruction. Maybe we need someone who thinks like a warrior." The debate continued for hours. Many representatives argued that contacting humans would be worse than facing the Void Hunters. They remembered the stories of human ruthlessness and their terrifying efficiency in warfare. But as more reports came in of destroyed systems and fleeing refugees, the opposition began to weaken. Finally, Moron called for a vote. "All in favor of sending a distress signal to humanity?" She counted the raised hands and tentacles around the chamber. "The motion passes by a narrow margin." Captain Lisa Martinez was enjoying a quiet meal in her quarters aboard the USS Harmony when the communication alert sounded. The Harmony was a small diplomatic vessel that patrolled the border of human space, watching for any violations of the quarantine agreement. In her 15 years of service, Martinez had never received a message from outside human territory. The transmission was encrypted with old council codes that hadn't been used in centuries. When Martinez decoded the message, she couldn't believe what she was reading. The Galactic Council was asking for human help. After 300 years of treating humanity like dangerous criminals, they were begging for assistance. The message was short and direct. "To the human government, an ancient threat has awakened and threatens all life in this galaxy. Our conventional forces cannot stop them. We formally request military assistance from humanity. We will discuss terms if you are willing to help." Martinez immediately forwarded the message to Earth Command and requested permission to respond. Within an hour, she received new orders directly from Admiral Sullivan on Luna Station. She was to acknowledge the Council's request and arrange a meeting to discuss details. As Martinez composed her reply, she wondered if humanity would actually help the species that had shunned them for so long. But she also knew that Admiral Sullivan and the human leadership had been preparing for something like this. Humanity had spent 3 centuries building weapons and training soldiers while the rest of the galaxy enjoyed peace. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy what humans could really do. Admiral Jake Sullivan stood in the command center of Luna Station, staring at the message from Captain Martinez. The holographic display showed the Council's desperate plea, each word carefully chosen to hide their panic. 300 years of calling humans dangerous monsters, and now they came begging for help when their perfect civilization faced extinction. Sullivan had been waiting for this moment his entire career. At 62 years old, he had served in the colonial border wars and helped design humanity's most advanced weapon systems. While the galaxy enjoyed peace, humans had prepared for war. Every ship, every weapon, every tactic had been tested and improved during decades of military exercises. "Get me General Thompson, Admiral Johnson, and Dr. Green," Sullivan told his aide. "Priority 1 conference in the war room." Within an hour, the 4 most important people in human military command sat around the strategy table. General Amy Thompson commanded the Colonial Marines, the toughest ground forces humanity had ever produced. Admiral Pete Johnson controlled the Deep Space Fleet, responsible for humanity's most advanced warships. Dr. Rachel Green led the Xenobiology Research Division and knew more about alien species than anyone else alive. "So they finally need us," Thompson said, reading through the Council data. "After treating us like criminals for 3 centuries, they want our help." "The tactical reports are interesting," Johnson added, studying the Void Hunter attack patterns. "These creatures absorb energy-based weapons and use that power to grow stronger. No wonder the aliens can't fight them. Their entire military doctrine is based on plasma and particle weapons." Dr. Green pulled up holographic images of the Void Hunter remains that had been recovered from destroyed systems. The biological data is limited, but these entities appear to be part organic and part machine. They have some kind of energy conversion system that processes stellar radiation and weapons fire into usable power. Sullivan leaned back in his chair, considering the options. What do we know about their physical structure? They're massive, Green replied. Some reports describe creatures the size of small moons. Their outer shells appear to be some kind of metallic composite, but we don't have detailed scans. The aliens who encounter them usually don't survive long enough to gather much data. Physical armor can be penetrated, Thompson said. The question is whether our kinetic weapons can punch through whatever they're made of. Sullivan stood up and walked to the window overlooking Earth. The blue planet rotated peacefully below, unaware that its children might soon be called to save the galaxy. We're going to help them, he announced. But we do this on our terms. Sir, Johnson asked, what kind of force are we talking about? Everything we've got, Sullivan replied. This is our chance to prove that humanity deserves a place in the galaxy. We're going to show them what 3 centuries of military preparation can accomplish. The orders went out within hours. Every military facility in the Sol system received the same message. Prepare for immediate deployment. Shipyards that had been building warships for decades suddenly doubled their production schedules. Training facilities pushed their soldiers harder than ever before. Research labs worked around the clock to adapt human weapons for fighting the Void Hunters. Captain Steve Miller received his assignment while reviewing supply reports aboard the USS Retribution. The massive dreadnought was the pride of the human fleet. Armed with experimental quantum torpedoes and protected by the strongest armor humanity could build. Miller had commanded the ship for 5 years, leading it through dozens of combat exercises and border patrol missions. Captain, his communications officer called out, we're receiving new orders from Fleet Command. Miller read through the deployment instructions with growing excitement. The Retribution would serve as flagship for the Response Fleet, leading 50 of humanity's most advanced warships into unknown territory. Their mission was simple: destroy the Void Hunters and protect galactic civilization. Commander Kate Wilson got similar orders aboard the USS Defiance, a massive carrier ship that housed 6 squadrons of advanced fighter craft. Wilson had earned her reputation during the asteroid pirate campaigns, where her tactical brilliance saved dozens of civilian transports. Now she would lead humanity's fighter pilots against enemies unlike anything they had ever faced. The fleet assembly took 3 weeks. Ships arrived from Mars shipyards, Jupiter research stations, and the outer colony worlds. Each vessel represented the pinnacle of human engineering, designed for maximum firepower and survivability. The aliens had larger fleets, but no single alien ship could match the destructive power of a human warship. Dr. Green worked with her research team to develop new weapons specifically for fighting the Void Hunters. Since energy weapons only made the creatures stronger, humanity would rely on kinetic penetrators and explosive warheads. Tungsten rods accelerated to 90% light speed could punch through almost any armor. Nuclear mines and antimatter charges would cause physical damage that couldn't be absorbed. The key is overwhelming them with multiple attack vectors, Green explained to the fleet commanders during their final briefing. These creatures have adapted to fight civilized species who rely on energy weapons. They won't expect primitive kinetic attacks combined with coordinated swarm tactics. General Thompson prepared the Marine contingents that would deploy with the fleet. Each ship carried specialized boarding teams trained to fight inside alien vessels. The Marines had developed new weapons and armor specifically for zero-gravity combat against unknown enemies. Remember, Thompson told her officers, we're not just fighting for humanity. Every species in this galaxy is counting on us to succeed. We represent the last hope for billions of innocent lives. Admiral Johnson coordinated the logistics of moving 50 warships across the galaxy. The fleet would need supply bases and repair facilities in alien territory. He negotiated with the Galactic Council for access to their space stations and refueling depots. "They're scared of us," Johnson reported to Sullivan. "Half the council representatives won't even speak directly to our diplomats. They still think we're going to conquer their worlds once we leave human space." "Let them worry," Sullivan replied. "Fear might be the only thing that keeps them honest during this alliance." The response fleet gathered in formation beyond Pluto's orbit, 50 ships arranged in perfect tactical spacing. Each vessel bristled with weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Railguns that could fire projectiles across star systems. Missile launchers loaded with antimatter warheads. Fighter bays filled with small craft designed for hit-and-run attacks. Captain Miller stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching his tactical display as the other ships reported ready for departure. His crew had trained for this moment their entire careers. Gunnery officers who could hit targets at impossible ranges. Engineers who could keep the ship fighting even with half its systems destroyed. Marines who would follow orders into the heart of hell itself. Commander Wilson ran final checks on her fighter squadrons. Each pilot had volunteered for the mission knowing they might never return home. They were the best humanity had to offer, trained in tactics that emphasized speed, aggression, and unpredictability. "All ships report ready for jump," the navigation officer announced. Miller looked around his bridge one last time before giving the order. These might be the last moments of peace they would know for months or years. "Fleet Command, this is Admiral Miller aboard the Retribution. The response fleet is ready to depart." Sullivan's voice came through the communication system from Luna. "Station. Good hunting, Admiral. Show them what humans can do." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the safety of human territory for the first time in 3 centuries. 50 ships carrying the hopes of an entire galaxy, manned by crews who had spent their lives preparing for war. They were heading toward an enemy that had destroyed civilizations for millions of years, but they were human, and humans had never learned how to surrender. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, and Captain Miller felt his stomach turn at the sight before them. 3 worlds that had once housed billions of Thalorian colonists were now nothing but barren rocks, floating in space. The atmosphere had been stripped away from each planet, leaving behind dead spheres of stone and metal. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Don Roberts from his position at the tactical station. "The scanner readings show no life signs anywhere in the system." Admiral Miller stood on the bridge of the Retribution, studying the destruction through the main view screen. Where cities once stood, only empty craters remained. The orbital stations that had processed raw materials for the Thalorian colonies were twisted wreckage drifting among the debris fields. "Sir," Roberts continued, "I'm picking up the remains of the Thalorian defense fleet scattered throughout the system. It looks like they tried to make a stand around the second planet." Commander Wilson's voice came through the fleet communication channel from the USS Defiance. "Admiral, my sensor teams are detecting massive energy signatures near the asteroid belt. Whatever did this is still here." The alien voices filled the communication frequencies as ships from a dozen species watched the human fleet enter the system. Most of them had never seen human technology before, and their panic was obvious in every transmission. "Human vessels. You must retreat immediately," called a crystalline commander from his ship positioned safely outside the system. "The Void Hunters cannot be defeated with conventional weapons. Every species that has tried to fight them has been destroyed." Miller ignored the alien warnings and focused on his tactical display. The energy signatures Wilson had detected were moving through the asteroid field, using the rocky debris as cover. Whatever was hiding there was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. "All ships, maintain formation and prepare for combat," Miller ordered. "Fighter squadrons launch and establish perimeter patrol. I want every weapon system online and ready to fire." The massive shape emerged from behind a cluster of asteroids, and the alien observers fell silent in terror. The Void Hunter was unlike anything in their databases, a nightmare combination of organic tissue and mechanical systems. Its surface writhed with metallic tentacles that sparked with energy, while pulsing cores along its hull absorbed radiation from the nearby star. "Target acquired," Roberts reported, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "Range is 400,000 kilometers enclosing. The creature is approximately 2,000 kilometers in diameter." Dr. Green's voice came through the communication system from her research ship. "All vessels avoid using energy-based weapons. Our analysis confirms that plasma and particle beams will only make it stronger. Stick to kinetic weapons and explosive warheads." The Void Hunter seemed to sense the human fleet and turned toward them with predatory interest. Smaller creatures, each the size of a destroyer, detached from the main body and moved to intercept the human formation. These scout entities crackled, with absorbed energy from their previous battles. "Sir," Wilson reported, "the smaller ones are moving fast. My fighters are engaging now." Major Tony Clark led the first fighter squadron into battle, his small craft dancing between the Void Hunter scouts. The alien observers watched in amazement as human fighters used tactics no civilized species would consider. Instead of maintaining safe distances and firing energy weapons, the human pilots flew directly at their enemies and unleashed volleys of kinetic projectiles. "Take that, you ugly piece of scrap," Clark shouted as his fighters' railguns punched holes through a scout's armor. The creature reeled back, dark fluid spraying from the wounds. For the first time in recorded history, someone had actually hurt a Void Hunter. The main creature let out a sound that no one had ever heard before, a combination of electronic screeching and organic roaring that echoed through space itself. It accelerated toward the human fleet, its tentacles reaching out to grab the nearest ship. "All weapons, open fire," Miller commanded. The Retribution unleashed its main battery, sending tungsten rods accelerated to 90% light speed directly into the Void Hunter's center mass. The projectiles punched clean through the creature's energy shields and tore massive wounds in its hull. Dark ichor sprayed into space as the monster writhed in pain and confusion. The other human ships followed the flagship's example, filling space with kinetic projectiles and explosive missiles. Nuclear warheads detonated against the creature's armor, each explosion causing visible damage instead of feeding its power systems. The Void Hunter had never encountered weapons that actually hurt it instead of making it stronger. "Keep firing," Miller shouted over the sound of his ship's weapons systems. "Don't give it time to adapt." Commander Wilson coordinated her fighter squadrons in a swarm attack pattern that the aliens had never seen before. Instead of maintaining formation and trading long-range shots, the human pilots flew in unpredictable patterns that made them impossible to target. They darted between the creature's tentacles, firing at weak points and vulnerable joints. The Void Hunter tried to grab the small fighters with its mechanical appendages, but the human pilots were too fast and too aggressive. They flew through spaces that no sane pilot would attempt, using the creature's own bulk against it. "This is insane," transmitted a Thalorian observer from his ship. "They're fighting inside the creature's defensive perimeter. No pilot has ever survived that close to a Void Hunter." But the human fighters not only survived, they were winning. Each attack run left the monster more damaged and more desperate. The creature began firing energy beams from its internal weapons, but the human ships were built to withstand such attacks. Their armor reflected the energy blasts harmlessly into space. The battle raged for 2 hours, with both sides taking heavy casualties. Humanity lost 12 ships and 3,000 crew members as the Void Hunter's dying struggles became more violent. But for every human vessel destroyed, the monster lost pieces of itself to the relentless kinetic bombardment. "Sir," Roberts reported, "the creature's energy readings are dropping rapidly. I think it's dying." The Void Hunter made one final desperate attack, launching itself directly at the Retribution in an attempt to drag the flagship down with it. Miller ordered all stop and fired every weapon. His ship possessed into the creature's approaching bulk. The tungsten rounds and nuclear warheads turned the monster's charge into a death spiral. Massive chunks of its body broke away and tumbled through space, no longer held together by the energy that had animated them. The creature's death scream echoed through every communication frequency before cutting off abruptly. The Void Hunter's corpse drifted past the human fleet, its tentacles finally still and its energy cores dark. The alien observers stared in shock at what they had just witnessed. The impossible had happened. A Void Hunter was dead. "All ships, damage report," Miller requested. Trying to keep his voice steady, the responses came in from the surviving vessels. Despite the heavy losses, most of the fleet remained operational. More importantly, they had learned valuable lessons about fighting these creatures. The Void Hunters could be killed, but it required tactics and weapons that the civilized galaxy had never developed. Dr. Green's research. Ship moved closer to examine the creature's remains. "Admiral, we need to study this corpse immediately. Understanding their biology might help us fight the others more effectively." Wilson's fighters continued patrol around the system, making sure no other Void Hunters were hiding in the debris fields. Her pilots were exhausted but victorious, proud to be the first humans to fight these legendary monsters. "Fleet Command, this is Admiral Miller," he transmitted back to Luna Station. "First engagement complete. Enemy casualties, 1 confirmed kill. Our casualties, 12 ships lost but mission successful. The Void Hunters can be defeated." As the human fleet began recovery operations, the alien observers finally found their voices. Transmission after transmission flooded the communication channels, all asking the same questions. How had the humans succeeded where every other species had failed? What weapons had they used? Would humanity share their tactics with the rest of the galaxy? Miller smiled as he listened to the alien chatter. 3 centuries of isolation had taught humanity many things, but the most important lesson was that sometimes the only way to win was to fight harder and more ruthlessly than your enemy expected. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had known all along. There was no problem that couldn't be solved with enough firepower and the will to use it. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Species that had already written off entire sectors as lost suddenly dared to hope again. The impossible had happened. Someone had actually killed a Void Hunter and lived to tell about it. Admiral Miller found himself summoned to the Galactic Council Station at Nexus Prime, where representatives from dozens of species waited to meet the humans who had achieved the impossible. The station's docking bay had been specially modified to accommodate human ships. Since no one had expected to host human visitors for another few centuries, the council chamber looked different when Miller entered with his senior staff, where once alien representatives had debated policy in comfortable luxury. Now the room buzzed with desperate energy. Every species present knew that their survival depended on learning whatever secrets humanity possessed. Admiral Miller, Moran of the Crystalline Hegemony, spoke from her position at the central podium. "The Galactic Council formally thanks you for your assistance in the Kepler system. We would like to discuss expanding our cooperation." Miller stood at attention, flanked by Commander Wilson and Dr. Green. "The human government is prepared to assist in the defense of galactic civilization. However, we will need full access to your tactical databases and unrestricted movement throughout Council space." A Thalorian representative named Vex shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Admiral, your methods are effective but extremely violent. Many of our species have concerns about human military tactics." "Your concerns are noted," Miller replied coldly. "But our violent methods are the only things keeping you alive right now. Every day you waste debating gives the Void Hunters time to consume more systems." Dr. Green stepped forward with a data tablet containing their analysis of the creatures. "Remains. We've learned several important facts about Void Hunter biology. They absorb energy-based attacks and convert that power into physical growth and enhanced abilities. However, they're vulnerable to kinetic weapons and electromagnetic pulse attacks. More importantly," Wilson added, "they can be overwhelmed if you attack from multiple directions simultaneously. Their defensive systems aren't designed to handle swarm tactics or coordinated strikes from small, fast-moving targets." The alien representatives listened carefully as the humans shared their findings. For the first time since the crisis began, someone was offering real solutions instead of evacuation plans. The human tactical approach was brutal and direct, but it worked. "We're prepared to train your pilots and soldiers in these new tactics," Miller announced. "But we'll need experienced personnel who can adapt quickly to unconventional warfare." Within weeks, human military advisors were spread throughout the galaxy, working with alien forces to develop new strategies. Commander Wilson established training facilities on 3 different worlds, teaching alien pilots how to fly aggressive attack patterns that emphasize speed and unpredictability over safety. The aliens struggled with concepts that came naturally to humans. Thalorian pilots were taught to maintain safe distances and avoid unnecessary risks. Human tactics required flying directly into danger and trusting your reflexes to keep you alive. Many alien trainees couldn't adapt to the mental shift required, but those who could adapt became deadly effective. A young Nephite pilot named Kex learned to use his species' natural flexibility to perform maneuvers that even human pilots found impressive. A crystalline warrior called Zara discovered that her crystal body could withstand gravitational forces that would crush organic pilots. Marine Colonel Rick Davis worked with ground forces throughout the galaxy, preparing them to fight the smaller Void Hunter drones that sometimes survived when the main creatures were destroyed. These infantry-sized entities retained all the energy absorption abilities of their larger cousins, making them nearly impossible to kill with conventional weapons. "Forget everything you've learned about civilized warfare," Davis told a group of Thalorian soldiers during a training exercise. "These things don't negotiate, they don't surrender, and they don't feel pain. Your only option is to kill them before they kill you." The human training programs produced rapid results. Allied fleets began achieving victories that would have been impossible months earlier. A combined human crystalline task force destroyed 3 Void Hunters in the Vega system using coordinated kinetic strikes. Thalorian ground forces successfully defended a colony world by implementing human infantry tactics, but the Void Hunters were adapting too. Intelligence reports from the front lines described new variants that seemed specifically designed to counter human tactics. Larger creatures with enhanced armor that could withstand kinetic impacts. Smaller, faster scouts that could match human fighter speeds. Most disturbing of all, some Void Hunters had begun using kinetic weapons of their own. Dr. Green studied these developments from her research station, working with alien scientists to understand how the creatures evolved so quickly. "They're not just learning from each battle," she explained to Admiral Miller during a secure communication. "They're sharing information across their entire species somehow. That means every victory teaches them how to fight us better," Miller realized. "We need to stay ahead of their adaptation cycle." The war escalated as both sides learned from each encounter. Human engineers developed new weapon systems almost weekly, trying to maintain their technological advantage. Electromagnetic pulse mines that could disrupt Void Hunter nervous systems. Armor-piercing rounds made from materials that couldn't be absorbed. Stealth fighters that could approach undetected. Captain Steve Miller's USS Retribution became legendary throughout the galaxy as reports of its victories spread. The ship had participated in 17 major battles and emerged victorious from each one. Miller's crew included heroes like Gunnery Officer Chief Patricia Lopez, who had developed new targeting solutions for fighting multiple enemies simultaneously. Engineer Lieutenant Sam Turner became famous for keeping ships operational under impossible conditions. During the Battle of Proxima Station, Turner had maintained the Retribution's weapon systems even after the ship lost main power and half its hull plating. His innovations were copied by engineering teams. Throughout the human fleet, the alien species began to see humans differently as the war progressed. Where once they had viewed humanity as dangerous savages, now they recognized them as skilled warriors fighting for the preservation of all life. Human soldiers were welcomed as heroes on worlds they had never seen before, but the cost was enormous. Every battle claimed human lives, and replacement crews were becoming harder to find. Earth's shipyards worked around the clock to replace destroyed vessels, but ships could be built faster than experienced crews could be trained. Commander Wilson lost 2 of her best squadron leaders during the defense of the Centauri colonies. Major Clark survived the battle, but his ship was so badly damaged that he would never fly again. New pilots arrived to replace the casualties, but they lacked the experience that came from months of combat. "We're winning individual battles," Wilson reported to Admiral Miller during a strategy meeting, "but we can't sustain these losses indefinitely. Every engagement costs us people we can't replace." Miller studied the tactical reports from across the galaxy. Human-led forces were achieving victory after victory, but the Void Hunters kept coming. For every creature they destroyed, 2 more appeared from the empty space between galaxies. The enemy seemed to have unlimited numbers. "We need to change our strategy," Miller decided. "Instead of fighting defensive battles, we need to find their source and cut them off." Dr. Green had been working on that exact problem. Her analysis of captured Void Hunter technology had revealed disturbing possibilities. "The creatures aren't randomly attacking systems," she explained. "They're following specific paths toward the galactic core. I think they're being directed by something much larger." Long-range sensors had detected massive energy signatures at the galaxy's edge, but no ship had been able to get close enough for detailed scans. Whatever was out there was drawing the Void Hunters forward like a beacon calling them home. "If we can locate and destroy their command structure," Green continued, "we might be able to stop the entire invasion." Miller looked at the star charts, showing the enemy's advance. The Void Hunters had consumed hundreds of systems and showed no signs of slowing down. Soon they would reach the heavily populated core worlds where billions of innocent civilians waited helplessly. Humanity had saved the galaxy from despair and shown that the Void Hunters could be defeated. But victory would require one final gamble. That would risk everything they had built. The real war was about to begin. The truth came from the most unlikely source. A damaged Void Hunter scout that had been captured during the defense of the Altair system finally yielded its secrets to Dr. Green's research team. Deep within its organic neural networks, they found data that changed everything humanity thought they knew about the war. "The Void Hunters aren't the real threat," Green announced during an emergency meeting of the Allied command staff. "They're just the advance force for something much worse." Admiral Miller studied the decoded information on his tactical display. The data described a massive construct called the Prime Harvester, a machine the size of an entire solar system that existed at the very edge of the galaxy. For millions of years it had slept in the cold emptiness between star clusters, waiting for the right conditions to begin its harvest. "According to this data," Green continued, "the Prime Harvester is designed to consume entire galactic clusters. It sends out the Void Hunters to weaken defenses and gather energy, then moves in to absorb everything: planets, stars, even black holes." Commander Wilson leaned forward in her chair, studying the technical specifications. "How long do we have before this thing arrives?" "Based on its current trajectory and speed," Green replied, "approximately 18 months. Once it reaches the galactic core, nothing will be able to stop it. The combined energy of every star in this galaxy will be absorbed to fuel its journey to the next cluster." The Allied representatives sat in stunned silence as they absorbed this information. Everything they had fought for, every victory they had achieved, was meaningless if the Prime Harvester completed its mission, the Void. Hunters were just an appetizer before the main course. Miller stood up and walked to the view screen, showing the galaxy's spiral arms. Billions of stars twinkled peacefully, unaware that their destruction was already planned. "What would it take to destroy this Prime Harvester?" "That's the problem," Green answered. "It's not just large, it's actually anchored to our dimension, using quantum field generators. Think of it as a parasite that exists partially in our reality and partially in others. Conventional weapons can't touch something that isn't entirely here." "But you have an idea," Miller said, recognizing the tone in Green's voice. "Theoretical only," Green admitted. "We could build quantum destabilizer warheads designed to collapse the anchor points. If we could deliver them to the construct's core and detonate them simultaneously, it might sever the dimensional connection." "Might," Wilson repeated skeptically. "The theory is sound," Green insisted. But we would need to penetrate to the very center of the construct, past whatever defenses it has, and coordinate a precise detonation sequence. And we would only get one chance. Miller studied the tactical implications. A direct assault on a target the size of a solar system would require every advanced ship humanity possessed. Even then, the chances of success were minimal. But the alternative was the complete extinction of galactic civilization. How many ships would we need for an operation like this? All of them, Wilson answered immediately. Every capital ship, every fighter, every support vessel, and we would need volunteers from the allied species to fill out the crews. The plan that emerged from the next week of intensive planning sessions was audacious beyond anything previously attempted. Operation Longshot would send the combined human fleet, now expanded to 200 ships with crews from dozens of species, on a direct assault against the Prime Harvester itself. Captain Miller, now promoted to Admiral Miller for the operation, would lead the assault from the USS Retribution. The flagship had been extensively modified with quantum destabilizer weapons and enhanced armor plating. Every human crew member on the ship had volunteered, knowing this was likely a one-way mission. Dr. Green's team worked around the clock to develop the quantum warheads. Each device was the size of a shuttle and required exotic materials that could only be produced in the zero-gravity foundries above Jupiter. The weapons had never been tested at full scale, but computer simulations suggested they would work. We'll have maybe 10 minutes once we reach the core, Green explained to the assembled fleet commanders. The quantum destabilizers need to be detonated in perfect synchronization, or the dimensional anchor will simply regenerate. Engineer Lieutenant Sam Turner had volunteered to manually activate the warheads if the automated systems failed. The job would require someone to stay behind and ensure the detonation sequence completed successfully. Turner knew he wouldn't survive the explosion, but he also knew that billions of lives depended on the mission's success. The final fleet comprised vessels from every major species in the galaxy. Human dreadnoughts flew alongside crystalline destroyers and Thalorian cruisers. The ships' hulls were decorated with symbols from 100 grateful worlds, each marking representing a species that refused to surrender to extinction. Remember, Miller addressed the fleet during their final briefing. This isn't just about human glory or proving our worth to the galaxy. This is about preserving everything that makes life worth living. Every child who deserves to grow up in freedom. Every dream that deserves a chance to come true. The journey to the galaxy's edge took 3 weeks at maximum hyperspace velocity. Long-range sensors began detecting the Prime Harvester's massive bulk days before they arrived. The construct was even larger than the intelligence reports had suggested, a writhing mass of mechanical and organic components that stretched across millions of kilometers. Visual contact with target, reported Lieutenant Commander Roberts from his tactical station. The construct appears to be actively consuming matter from the surrounding void. I'm reading massive energy spikes across the entire structure. The Prime Harvester noticed their approach and responded with a defense that defied imagination. Thousands of Void Hunter variants poured from launch bays scattered across its surface. Some were larger than any creature the Allies had previously encountered. Others were smaller, but moved with terrifying speed and coordination. All fighters launch immediately, Miller ordered. Bombers target the outer defense platforms. Capital ships maintain formation and prepare for heavy resistance. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Human fighters, their pilots trained in months of combat against Void Hunters. LED-coordinated strikes against the construct's defensive systems. Allied ships fought alongside them, their crews finally understanding the aggressive tactics that humanity had perfected. Commander Wilson coordinated the fighter assault from the USS Defiance, her tactical expertise keeping the squadrons organized despite the overwhelming enemy numbers. Major Clark, now serving as her operations officer after losing his ability to fly, managed combat assignments that kept the human pilots alive long enough to complete their missions. Defense grid is showing gaps in Sectors 7 and 12. Clark reported, We can punch through if we concentrate our firepower. The combined fleet fought through wave after wave of defenders, leaving behind destroyed ships and fallen heroes as they pressed toward the construct's core. Every kilometer closer came at a terrible cost, but the surviving crews maintained their formation and continued the assault. Admiral Miller watched his tactical display as friendly contacts disappeared one by one. Ships that had served with distinction throughout the war were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Crews that had become family were gone in moments of brilliant destruction, but they were getting closer. The quantum destabilizers were armed and ready for deployment. Turner's engineering teams had verified that the weapons would function as designed. All they needed was 10 more minutes to reach the target coordinates. "Admiral," Roberts called. "Out, massive energy buildup detected at the construct's core. I think it's preparing some kind of defensive weapon." The Prime Harvester's final defense was a gravitational weapon that could crush entire fleets by manipulating space-time itself. Reality twisted around the attacking ships as the construct tried to collapse them into artificial black holes. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Miller shouted. "Stay together and keep moving toward the target." The USS Retribution led the surviving fleet through a maze of distorted space, its reinforced hull groaning under gravitational stresses that would have destroyed lesser vessels. Behind them, the last defenders of galactic civilization followed their flagship toward either victory or annihilation. "Core breached," Turner reported from the engineering section. "Deploying quantum destabilizers now." The warhead spread throughout the construct central chamber, each one precisely positioned to maximize the dimensional disruption. Turner moved from device to device, manually activating the systems that would save the galaxy and end his own life. "All ships withdraw immediately," Miller ordered. "Detonation in 60 seconds. Most of the fleet managed to escape the blast radius, but Turner remained behind to ensure the weapons fired correctly. His final transmission was characteristically brief. "Job's done, Admiral. Take care of my family." The quantum destabilizers detonated simultaneously, tearing holes in reality itself. The Prime Harvester's death scream echoed across dimensions as its anchor points collapsed and its massive bulk was pulled into the spaces between universes. Every void hunter in the galaxy simply shut down as their controlling intelligence was destroyed of the 200 ships that began.